Robert Plank Show, episode 343, High Converting Sales Copy Formula. Find your sales hook through empathy and make money by following a simple copywriting formula with Alyson Lex. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. We're talking right now with Alyson Lex, and in order to get to her website, let me spell it out for you. That's ALYSONLEX.com. And creating better copy means more of your prospects will become your customers, which leads to a bigger business and more dollars in your pocket. So Alyson Lex is the copy coach and the direct response copywriter that makes the magic happen in your sales letters, your landing pages, your lead magnets, and email campaigns. And she helps entrepreneurs just like you create winning copy for your business, whether you simply need a second set of eyes or you want someone to do it all for you. So Alyson, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I am stoked to be here. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I am stoked as well, and I'm planning on having a lot of fun too. And I just kind of want to get it out of the way. Whenever we bring up copywriting, I feel like I always have to say that when we're talking copywriting, we're talking about salesmanship in print. We're talking about putting those words on your webpage. That way people buy from you. And it's not the when you draw a C and put a circle around it. I feel like sometimes I have to sort of mention that. So copywriting. Can you kind of tell us,
Yeah.
as far as copywriting goes, like, I mean, is there anything that you do that kind of makes you special and you kind of stand out in the world of copywriting?
I focus on high converting sales copies. So another thing that I like to talk about is the difference between sales copy and content, because a lot of times people think, "Oh, you mean my blog posts?" And no, I don't. I mean your sales pages and your funnels and your services tab on your website and anything, your landing pages, your autoresponder emails, all of that stuff that's designed to get people to give you their time, attention, information, or money. And so that's what I mean by copy. And yeah, I've been doing it for a long time. I love direct response, and um, I have my own formula that I've published and developed and published as a product that I use to create sales copy and also teach other people how to do it.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to crack that open, dive into that a little bit. And I'm glad that you made that distinction that there's
Hmm.
content like your like a blog post. You put out a blog post, and people might like click on it and read it and leave, or maybe they'll tweet it. And then there are these there's like sales copy. Then there's actual landing pages where we might want someone to like opt in or book an appointment with us or buy something from us. So I'm really glad that you made that distinction. And so when you have a client coming to you, what do they say exactly? Do they say like, I need a website, or my website isn't converting, needs to be cleaned up? I mean, what's the starting point if someone first comes to you?
Yeah, so we have a lot of different starting points. Sometimes it's, I don't know why I'm not making sales. And sometimes you have people who have done all of the deep dive work for me already and say, I need a new sales page written for my product, or I'm launching a new product, or I'm going into a new market, or I'm having this special offer, this campaign, or this event. And so then we have something really specific in mind. So really, you have either people who just need help kind of diagnosing and then treating a problem, or people who are ready to put something new out into the world and they know specifically what they want. And I can either work with people to develop the strategy and then the deliverables for the product or project rather, or hey, you tell me what you want and I'll make it happen.
Awesome. And so since I'm kind of like curious about your thought process, and you mentioned this copywriting formula that you had at the beginning, so I'm really curious. So if someone comes to you and they say, "All right, I want something new," I mean, what happens then? Like, what sort of questions do you ask, and what's your thought process there?
Yeah, so I do a whole pre-writing analysis, and some of that I do with the client, and some of it I do on my own because research is a big part of any copy process. And whether you're writing your own copy or hiring a copywriter, the research has to be done no matter what. You've got to not only know who your audience is on a demographic level, but there are actually three other levels that I talk about that you need to know your audience. You need to know them socially, how they relate to their friends. So things you would know if you were their friend on Facebook. Relationally, how they relate to you. Have they, bought from you, tweeted you, come into your shop if you have a brick and mortar kind of thing. And then you need to know them psychologically. And that's the deep dive copy gold stuff that I call copy gold. And it's things like what keeps them up at night, what are they worried about, Essentially, what problem are they paying you to solve for them? That's what it's going to boil down to. And once you've done all that work, then you can begin to talk about how your product or your service addresses those worries and those aspirations and those problems. And you can do that through the formula that I have that I mentioned already. And I've kind of broken that down to a high level 5 steps, which I'm happy to share with you if you'd like.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so step number 1 is to get their attention, identify your audience and get their attention. And that's going to be done in the headline area. Headline, pre-head, subhead, all those, headline related parts. And then step 2 is to identify the problem. Step 3 is to introduce your solution. Step 4 is tell them how to get it. And step 5 is don't let them walk away without it. And so if you follow those, and obviously super high level, super fast, I just rattled it off, but also easy to remember. And then there are different elements within those 5 steps that is part of the Ultimate Sales Generator program that I have that kind of gives you exactly where in there the testimonials go into step 3, by the way, and that kind of thing, so that you can make sure you have all of the elements in the right spot.
Cool. And I think that, I'm sure that we don't have time to unpack all this, and I'm sure that we want to save that for, your freebie or your product or stuff like that. But so just to kind of recap though, so when you do your research, you look at that audience and you break it down to the 3 levels: socially, which is how they relate to friends; relationally, which is how they relate to you, how they bought from you or tweeted from you; and then psychologically, which is that problem that keeps them up at night, which is kind of how you base the copy out of around this problem that there's a solution for. And then after that sort of solution is apparent, then there's the product and those 5 steps that you just mentioned. So step number 1, get attention, which is the headline, pre-head, and subhead. Step number 2, identify the problem. Step number 3, introduce the solution. Step number 4, explain how to get it. And step number 5, don't let them walk away without it. And I think that it's really helpful to kind of get that whole high level overview, because I'm hoping that now if people are listening and they look back at their sales letters, either that maybe they made themselves or they hired from someone else, maybe they can now look at those sales letters and kind of see about those steps there. And then maybe if they can look at other people's sales letters or get ideas, or know if they're if a
Absolutely.
copywriter is doing their job, if they kind of go through those steps. And so thanks for breaking down those steps. And so can you kind of give us like an example of maybe like a client you've had and they came to you and they said, I have these problems, I have these things that needed solving, and you kind of did your research, ran it through this formula, and came up with something super awesome?
Yeah, so I actually just wrote a new sales page for a self storage info product. Okay, so it was a guy that was teaching people how to make money investing in self storage properties. You know, those places you go when you're in between houses. I had a storage unit for so long. Um, and he had a sales page, and his problem was that he just hadn't paid a lot of attention to it, right? So he had a lot of other businesses going on, and this was just always on the back burner. And he was finally like, enough, I have this asset. Let's actually make it some money. And so I went in and I looked at his sales page, which was basically just a description of the product, which, hey, something's better than nothing. And then so he sent me the product and I was able to kind of dive in. I went and looked at a lot of different social sites and things like that of people in that particular space. So I got a little bit about his customer and I was able to find some forums, and I read blog comments a lot, and comments on news articles. The comment section is really good if you want to get insight into your audience. Um, and then I was able to go ahead and build kind of a sales letter from scratch. And what I determined was that the way that he presented his product was not done the way that I think it would have been done to be more successful. He didn't have bonuses built in. So I was able to split his product out, create some bonuses out of things he'd already offered, just called them something different, and was able to make a much more attractive package. And I think that's being implemented and launched now.
Super cool. And so there's lots of good stuff in there, and I like that you kind of went on Facebook and you looked at news
Oh yeah.
sites and comments just to kind of get a feel for the customers. And I mean, what were you really looking for with that exactly? Like, were you looking for like a common repeated problem, or to get specific language, or something else? Like, what was the reason for diving deep into these comment sections?
That's actually, you hit the nail on the head right there. So I look for, like I said, you want to get to know your audience psychologically. And the best way to do that is to look at the problems they say they're having, or the frustrations that they have, or, why they think this didn't work. I read rip-off report a lot because, these people have invested in something that they think didn't work. Why did they think it didn't work? There's an objection that I can overcome in my sales copy. And like you said, the language. I really am a big advocate of using the words that your customers use. I'm guilty of it myself. I use my own words. I'll say, "Hey, I can write some really high converting sales copy." And it's like, "No, wait. I help you get more sales." Like nobody's coming and saying, "I want some high converting sales copy." They say, "I want more sales." So, by using the language that your customers use, you're going to connect with them on a better level, and you're going to you're going to see more conversions or more sales.
And I think that's a really important reminder that I'm bad at, and I need to be reminded of every now and then to like sort of tone down the jargon and to make things
Yeah.
more accessible. And I think that the time that it really clicked with me was I was an attendee on someone else's webinar, and this person literally started the webinar and started talking about autoresponders and Aweber, and they're like talking about Aweber code, and I'm thinking, well, geez, if I just happen to come
Mhm.
across this person, and maybe if I didn't even know what an autoresponder was, or if I had like the wrong idea, I would be completely lost. And so, out of curiosity, when you looked at the comment sections about those people who use self storage units, I mean, what sort of stuff jumped out at you?
Well, so actually, in this instance, it wasn't necessarily people who use the self storage unit. It's the people who are investing in the entire properties. So they're buying them in order to make money and running the business. And so I was able to identify the demographic. So in the about your audience part, you mentioned the three levels, but the fourth level is actually the demographics. So you start with who they are, then what they like, and then how they relate to you, and then their psychological stuff. But I knew the demographics, and it tended to be a little bit older, looking for an investment property, so they had some disposable income. And we identified a few occupations or professions that they were most likely to be in. And so I was able to take that information, and at one point, um, I there's some assuming that goes in. So I made an assumption based on their potential political beliefs, and I would, it's always fun when you dive into the political comments, but you're able to just kind of see that okay, they're frustrated with the state of the economy, and they're a little unsure about the future of the world or the country, and there's some changes, and what does that mean for my family and my income, and is my money safe in the banks, and where can I get a really good investment property that's going to have a good return, or I'm looking to reduce my initial cash outlay, like, so you have a lot of different fears and different problems that they talk about. And it doesn't necessarily need to be on a self storage website, it can be on any website where your target market hangs out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And what's sort of I don't know, like weird and magical about this whole copywriting thing is like as you're sort of describing their fears and their problems with like all this like economic uncertainty, and
Mm-hmm.
at the same time the like the sort of the reliability and the ability for them to
Mm-hmm.
make this passive income. It's like just kind of for some reason just hearing about these sort of problems like almost gets me excited about renting out storage units, even though I've
Yeah.
never done it, have no interest in it, but just kind of like kind of diving into it, sort of like almost like excites me, just sort of hearing about it. And I think that that's sort of interesting. We're taking like sort of a boring topic where before you said it was just a description of the product, and now you're talking about possibilities and about like the fear of like providing for their family. Now it's getting into all this sort of fun stuff, and it sounds like that I mean, like the research is a lot of that, right? I mean, it sort of sounds like if you didn't do that sort of research, or you only did the research for a few minutes, you kind of wouldn't get into like that the magical, exciting part. Is that about right?
Absolutely. The more you know about your customer, the more you can get into their head, the easier the copy is. One of I guess you could call it almost a dirty little secret is I can write the copy in a day. I mean, I could sit down and write the copy in just a few hours. It's the research that takes all the time. And so to really understand the where you're going to come from, and that's where you find the hook, if you will, the reason that these people are going to read this letter, because quite honestly they don't care about your product, they don't care about why you're so excited to launch your product, they don't care about you as the copywriter or the product creator or the business owner at all. They care about themselves, and they care about their fears and their aspirations and what you can do for them. And that's not saying anything about the human condition. It's just that's how it is. There's so much noise out there that unless you can tell me why I should be reading this or what's in it for me, I'm not going to pay attention because I just don't have time.
So when you're doing this research and you're trying to find the hook, and you're trying to find like the one thing to
Mhm.
sort of grab them, do you like budget a certain amount of time? Like, do you say I'm going to spend 10 hours on this, or 10 days, or is it a matter of like you go out until you find the hook and then you're done, or like how do you sort of budget or allot that research time?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to stop researching just because I've hit a certain budgeted time. And also, some audiences are easier for me to write to than others. I'm a mom of a 1 year old. So if you've got a product geared at 1 year olds and their moms, well, I don't really need to do much research because I am that person. But if you're speaking about a 50-year-old man who is an investment banker, I've got a little more to do because I've never been that person. Um, and so there's a degree of empathy that comes with it, and being able to imagine myself in in other people's shoes. Um, and that might be something earlier in the show you asked what I bring to the table that's kind of unique, and maybe my empathy, my ability to empathize is one of those things. But to be able to understand somebody, it's going to be easier if I am that person or have someone that I know is that person than if it's a totally foreign market for me.
Okay, fair enough. So some things you can relate to very easily, and you don't need a lot of research, and some things require more research. But I mean, like, about how long are we talking? Like, is it like a few days, a few weeks? Like, about how long? I know that it takes
Yeah,
different lengths of time, but I mean, about how
it
long
does.
does this take?
I think if you probably put all the time together, it would be a couple of days. If I was to sit and do it straight for a couple of days, then it would be the right amount. But that is often spread through, like you said, a couple of weeks because I can't just sit and do research for 3 days.
Right. I mean,
um,
I couldn't either. My eyes would
right?
start to cross together if it was
Yeah,
just
they
too
would go
much of the same
buggy.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so funny. I was a big Mad Men fan. I don't know if you were as well, but Don
Yeah.
Draper seemed to sit and do nothing a lot. Um, and there is a degree of that. There is a degree of the sitting and doing what looks like nothing, but it's really kind of letting things digest. And some of my best headlines I've come up with while I'm sitting out at the pond in my backyard because I'm thinking and I'm seeing and I'm building my swipe file and I'm on 85,000 different lists. I don't even know anymore. Um, my email inbox is crazy, but I'm always looking for different ideas and different things, and they kind of stitch themselves together sometimes in my subconscious. And that can take time too. So by the time I actually sit down to write, I've at least got the idea together. I know which way I'm going to go with it. Um, and at the same time, if you're writing your own copy, you've got to do the same thing too. You're always kind of looking at your business and looking at other people's businesses and saying, oh, this might work really well here. And maybe I can talk about this experience, or this customer's told me about this problem. So I need to address that in my copy. And you're always kind of building and working.
Awesome, and I can relate to a lot of that. The like the subconscious doing the work for you, or
Yeah.
just when you try to stop pushing it so much and you just kind of take a break and go into nature or just like unplug and relax, and then sometimes
Exactly.
like different ideas combine, or like an idea kind of you can take an old idea and update it, or kind of like you said, like see an idea from like some other niche or something else and like sort
Yeah.
of take a piece of it and then try to apply it to your project so that way it's like it doesn't look like it came from the original thing, but it's kind of the same, like like the same like idea or like message or whatever behind it. I can relate to a lot of that, and so there's this whole phase of like researching and thinking, and then when it comes time to actually like sit down and write the thing, I mean, what's your process there? Do you like write the copy in order, or do you write like the end first or the headline first, or kind of jump around, or like what's sort of your
Mhm.
process when it comes to actually writing these sales letters?
I try to start at the beginning. If I have an idea for a headline, I will throw it in there. If I'm stuck, I'll skip it for the time being. But I do write a lot of different headlines over and over again before I settle on one. So sometimes I'll throw a placeholder headline in there with an idea, and then I'll write a little bit of the intro, and then I'm like, oh, that would make a good headline. So I rearrange it and I stop and I fix. Some people write an entire first draft and just then go back and completely edit, and I edit as I go. Um, but I do tend to write in order. So the only part that stays out of order is that really the step one of that 5 step formula I told you about, that introduction, call out, headline area, just because sometimes that's the hardest because there's a lot of pressure on the headline, right? And but I write it in order. I may go edit and move things around and fill in. Um, but that's just my process. Everybody's different there.
Okay, fair enough. But I think that that's there's a really good lesson in there that if in whatever you're doing, if I mean if it's copywriting or writing in general, I mean just even if you can't think of like the best, most
Mhm.
amazing headline ever, if you can think of a good enough one, why not put it out there, have it as the placeholder, write the rest
Yeah.
of the copy, and then your subconscious might even think of a better one, and you can just go in there and update it. And if not, well then that's the best headline that you came up with. And so, as you were explaining like your process and about like writing and stuff, one thing that's always kind of, I don't know, like not really confused me, but kind of I feel like I don't 100% grasp it, is it seems like maybe 5, 10 years ago, the trend kind of shifted to more of like more graphics or like less
Mhm.
text, or sometimes I'll go to a website and it looks super slick, like they'll have like multiple columns and like icons and pictures and stuff like that. And so I mean, how does that sort of, how does that relate? Because I feel like a lot of like the old school copy is like have like a web page that's 10, 20, 30 pages long and it's all text, and now like some of this like graphical sort of fun, less words on the page is taking over. And so I mean, like, what are your thoughts on that, and has that changed your process at all?
It really doesn't change my process, with the exception that in the initial client consultation, we'll have a conversation about what the end result will look like. If they want more of the old school, which I love old school, that's just, I worked at Glazer Kennedy, so Dan Kennedy style is my style for a lot. Um, but if they want the graphics, we tend to keep the same foundation, those same 5 steps or the same 23 elements of the Big Daddy formula, as I call it. They're still there. They just look different. They might have some different backgrounds, or we might split it into some columns or things like that. But if you break down some of the big name sales pages of these old school copywriters that have adapted to some new school methods, they're going to have all of those elements there. They've been updated. And that's one of the reasons that I like to learn principles rather than the shiny technique, because at the base those principles stay the same. It does adapt to the technology and the trend, as you said.
Cool. So the foundation is the same, but then just sort of the fad or the trend is what changes. And so if we're trying to like adapt to those new changes, I mean, how do we do it? Like, do you write all the text first, and then if you have that client that they want sort of the modern look, do you then go and update it, or like what's sort of your thought process if you're trying to take this sort of like proven and tried and tested sort of sales letter and then make it look as if it's brand new? What's your process there?
Yeah, you hit it again. So I write it the way that I would write anything, and then I adapt it for the medium. So if I'm writing a VSL, I write the sales letter, and then I just make it a script. And I mean, because I write conversationally anyway, so it's not a whole lot of editing. But this way, the foundation, like you said, is there, and it's based in what I know works, and then we can make it look however we need to make it look. If I need to go back and put in a box, or say this is where a section break's going to be, or hey, make this a different background color, or whatever instructions I'm going to give to the web implementer, then that's what I do. And a lot of times I will say, does your web guy know what he's doing, or does your web girl know what she's doing? And if the answer is yes, then I just give them the copy and say, here's my thoughts, but you know the design. And so I really am a big believer in letting the expertise be where it is. I I have my ideas about user experience. I have my ideas about design. That doesn't mean I'm the expert. And what it does mean is I can give my ideas and let them implement as they see fit.
Awesome, I like that a lot. And so as you're sort of making these changes, like you said, like if you're saying, well, put these check boxes in here or hand it off to the web designer, do you fight any kind of perfectionism or anything like that?
I think there's always a degree of perfectionism because you do get attached to it. You like the way it's turned out. You wouldn't deliver it to the client if you didn't. Um, but I also recognize that, hey, once you pay me, the copyright's yours. You're going to do with it what you want anyway. So why don't I get on board, give you what I think is the best idea so that you can go forward owning, you're the business owner, you're in charge. So you just own this copy and have the best experience you can. I want my clients to be successful. So if they have somebody who's more an expert than I am with something like web design, then it doesn't serve my client for me to hold on just because I think it should be a certain way. I mean, of course, there's ego at play and perfectionism, like you said, but you also got to just let it go and know what battles are worth fighting.
Cool, good way of looking at it. And I like how you said that it was sort of like, well, you're just putting your best ideas forward, and if you and your client might have a different idea, or they might have someone else beef it up, or they might do any number of things with it, and so all we can do is our best. So really great
Exactly.
stuff. And I mean, I'm sort of starting to wind things down here, but what keeps coming back to mind with me is you're mentioning about like different pieces of copy on a page, and even in your bio, you mentioned that like sometimes it helps to get that sort of fresh set of eyes. And so, when you
Mhm.
look at all these sort of sales letters around, do you see like the same mistake or like a really common mistake being made if you just looked at like a random sales letter on the internet? Is there like a mistake you'd almost like guarantee we would see?
Yes. You want to know what it is?
Heck yeah, I do.
Okay. The mistake is using the word I in the first three paragraphs of the sales letter. So I say this because the beginning of your sales letter, all the way up until my step three, where you're telling your customer about the solution you have for them, is the sales letter is not about you at all. It's completely and 100% about them, their problem, and their experience. And so a lot of times I'll see a sales letter that'll say, is this the problem you have? Well, I have the solution. Keep reading. No, here's the problem. Here's the problem. Here's about them, about them, about them. And the solution doesn't show up until way later because that's when you start talking about yourself. The only time you can do that is if you're telling them how you were there and you understand. So if I was to say something like, is your business struggling because your copy isn't doing well? I know what that feels like. I was there just last year. I know how it feels to feel this way. You're feeling like back to you. You know what I mean? So you really shouldn't be talking about yourself at all for a long time in your sales copy.
That's really good advice, and that's one of those things where I think that the times that I've noticed that, well, there we go again, I, right? But what I've noticed the word I being in the copy so much, is it's like hard to not notice it. And it's like if it's not there, I don't even notice that it's not there. But if it is there, it's like that's sort of all I see. And as you were sort of explaining how to or like saying like here's a sentence that has this sort of too much of I mentioned, it's and what I realized was like as you were saying, like I was thinking like a way to clean up that sentence, you could cross out like half the words and still say the same thing but in less words. So if it's like,
Yeah,
well, are you having this problem? So do I. Keep reading. Well, if you just say, are you having this problem? Well, if yes, keep reading. Then it's like not about you, and it says the same in
exactly.
less words. And even as you were just kind of explaining, like using the word I too much, what it also kind of brought to mind for me was like, how like if you try to tell someone about like, oh, I just had like the worst day, and then instead of them like listening to you, they say, oh no, wait, my day is even worse, and it's like, well,
Hmm.
now you're kind of one-upping me, and you're kind of minimizing
Exactly.
like what my problem is. So I definitely I can see that being a huge kind of thing to avoid, that having that I in there. And I've noticed too, like because I used to like write a lot of copy for myself and then get it critiqued to kind of beef it up. And a problem that I had for a long time was using like don't or can't, or using like a lot of negative stuff. And just by kind of making that pass on it and by flipping some of that language around, it was more concise, more simple, easier to follow, kind of flowed through. And it was just like it's sort of weird how we all have those sort of language patterns, and not just in the like the usual ticks, but even just like you said, like saying I, or certain things that are kind of embedded in our own words, that if we don't know to look for some of those things to fix, then we're not even going to notice that they're there. But our customers notice because they won't buy. So better to get those sorts of
Yeah,
things fixed. So
that's exactly it. That's exact. And you want to audit your copy for any stumbling blocks that your customers might hit. Like we talked about earlier, jargon or words that might be difficult to understand, too high of a reading level, talking about yourself too much, and even once it's implemented graphically, reverse print, which is white text on black background. If you have too much of that, it hurts your eyes. Um, Pictures that are distracting, or confusing calls to action where they're not sure exactly where to click. You want to audit your sales pages for those things, because those are very easy places for your customers to say, "Okay, I'm done reading. Let me click X now."
and maybe even not even realize why they were clicking X. Just it was like
Exactly.
too much kind of turned them off, slowed them down, or whatever, and then they were out of there. So I'm sure that if people are listening, they've gotten a lot of like really good stuff, and if they're like me, they've kind of gotten excited about I feel like I want to go write a sales letter now or something.
Yeah,
But
do it. That would be awesome.
so we've got a little like a lot of things to do and a lot of
Uh-huh.
things to avoid, and I'm sure that a lot of people listening kind of would like to sort of have this all in one place, or have the whole blueprint. And so if someone either wants to hire you to get their copy written, or they want to find some resource of yours to make a sales letter without making all the usual mistakes, I mean, do you have any stuff like that? And can you tell us about your websites and your products?
Yeah, so you mentioned it at the beginning. AlysonLex.com is my website, and that's my home on the web. And of course, my mom couldn't spell it normally, so it's Alyson, and last name is Lex.com. And if you want to grab, I have a headline generator. So we didn't even talk about headlines like I usually do, but it's it's going to help you create 6 headlines in 30 seconds by answering just a few short questions about your business. And it's a PDF download, so super free. And that's at www.askacopyexpert.com/generate. And currently, right now, after that, like on the thank you page of that, there is an opportunity to snag a free video where I go through those 5 steps we talked about a little more in depth, and actually with slides, so you can write it down rather than struggling to scribble down notes as we talked very quickly back and forth.
Super cool. So what's good about today is hopefully they kind of whet their appetite a little bit, and then now that
Yeah,
they're excited and they say, okay, well there were a lot of steps in there, and it sounded great, but I didn't have time to write it all down, and they should
yeah,
go to askacopyexpert.com/generate to get two bonuses in one, right? They get that generator, they get those headlines cranked out,
yeah.
and they can get that resource as well.
That free video, yeah. I love helping people create their own copy. I believe that entrepreneurs and small business owners are going to save the world, and I would love to help as many people be successful as possible. So definitely snag those free resources so you can build your businesses.
Super great, and everyone should do that because I mean, just having writer's block and stuff like that isn't a good enough reason to hold you back from all your hopes and dreams and taking care of your family and all that usual copywriting stuff that gets everyone all jazzed and everything. And so,
Yeah.
so askacopyexpert.com/generate to get the headline generated, and then if someone is looking kind of to hire you as a copywriter, is that a thing people can do as well?
Yeah, people can definitely hire me. I do have openings for clients. And so you can contact me either on my website, AlysonLex.com, or if you want to browse around askacopyexpert.com, there's contact information there too.
Great stuff. So make sure that while you're either at askacopyexpert.com/generate or at AlysonLex.com to see what she's all about. If you've finally seen enough and you're ready to pull the trigger, find that contact form, fill it out, and let Alyson know your needs, and you'll set up a time to meet, and you'll get the ball rolling on that stuff. And so I want to thank you so much, Alyson, from AlysonLex.com for stopping by and sharing all this kind of sort of entertaining stuff about copywriting. And what I really liked about our talk today is that it sounds like a lot of it is just like uncovering the good ideas. A lot of it sounds like researching your those customers, and then going and checking out things like rip-off report or social media or comments or news sites, or just kind of digging
Yep.
deep and kind of getting into their heads. And then once you kind of get the hook and get those ideas and get those terms, and it sounds like just plugging it into that step-by-step process goes a lot smoother, as opposed to either people trying to wing it and not having a plan, not having a formula. Sounds like a really easy way to get writer's block, but I'm sure a lot of other people, they still get stuck and they say, okay, great, got to have a headline, got to do all this. But if they don't kind of start it with some of those raw materials, some of that research first, then they're also going to have trouble with the step-by-step formula. So research first, and then all these different steps, and then also avoid different stumbling blocks. So lots of great stuff, and everyone should go to AlysonLex.com and askacopyexpert.com/generate. And thanks so much, Alyson, for stopping by and sharing with us what you know about copywriting.
Thank you so much for having me. I really had a good time.
Do you run your online business using WordPress? Did you know that the number one reason why people's WordPress sites get hacked is because of outdated plugins, outdated WordPress, or just flat out not knowing what they have out there? I mean, how many times have you created a test site and just let it sit there? You're leaving yourself at risk. Besides that, you're wasting a ton of time every single time WordPress updates or your plugins update. There's a better way. Check out Website Remote, where you can manage all of your WordPress sites from one simple to use dashboard. I'm talking about comparing what's on each site, comparing what versions are out there, and most importantly, choosing what you want to update when you want to update it with one single click. This is the way that you need to be managing all of your WordPress sites. And we have a special just for you for being a listener of the Lance Tomashiro Show. Head on over to websiteremote.com/LTS. That's websiteremote.com/LTS to get your 99-cent trial started today. You're never going to look at managing your WordPress sites the same way again.